Hello fellow 3D enthusiast, my name's Ian, and today we're going to talk about camera tracking. So first of all, if you don't have Blender 2.81 yet, what are you doing? Just kidding, I didn't have it till a little while ago either. If you don't know what camera tracking is, it's when you take a video and then define a whole bunch of points in the scene and tell that to your computer, and your computer goes, let me think about that, and uses magic to find out where the camera position is. That way you have a CG camera that's doing the exact same thing as your real life camera, and you can drop in CG things into your real life footage and mix it all together and make it look cool. Before we go on, real quick, I'd like to mention that I've created a completely free hydraulic kit bash element pack for you. So these work best with Blender, and there's a link for them in the description. So first of all, you're going to want to take your footage and make that into an image sequence. I'm doing that by using Blender's video sequence editor. So your footage is going to be a lot more easy to track if it's less blurry. So I'll try to make sure and move my camera slowly and have some nice lighting on my subject so I can see it well. And once you have your nice footage rendered out into an image sequence, you can open a new project and hit VFX, and that'll drop you right into a nice workflow. Right off the bat, I'm going to collapse some of these windows because I don't really need all of them. Really only need the movie clip editor and the timeline. Now go ahead and import your image sequence into the movie clip editor. And make sure your start and end frames are set to the start and end of your movie clip. For the basics of tracking, you can hold Control and left click, and that'll place down a tracker. You're going to want to track areas with high contrast, which I don't do immediately here, but this point seems to work out alright. And with that particular track selected, you can always hit G to grab it, and R to rotate it, and S to scale it, like most things in Blender. And if you hit this button over here, or hit Control T, Blender will track the tracker. And it doesn't really look like a whole lot happened. That's just because Blender lost the track and you need to manually reset it to the position where it was. So this can happen if the movie clip kind of changes a little bit and Blender doesn't recognize that particular area. It happens quite a bit, so get used to it, I guess. A feature that's super helpful is hitting L, and that will lock your camera view to the track, and you can make sure that it doesn't jump around at all, because you definitely don't want it to jump around at all. Now to track your marker backwards, you can hit this button, or hit Control-Shift-T? Yeah, I've changed my hotkeys to be a little bit more accessible than all that. But anyways, yeah, Shift-Control-T goes backwards on the footage. Now I realize this is absolutely fascinating, but I'm going to fast forward this part a bit, just because it can be a little bit slow sometimes. Okay, let's put down our second marker. This area is a little bit more high contrast, so it should track a little bit better. And you can see, oof, the reflection of the table is getting in our way a little bit here. Sometimes Blender will think it's tracking the right thing, but it won't be, and the track will just jump all over the place. And we don't want that, so we have to manually set it straight and kind of retrack. At this point, I'm just kind of adding in trackers left and right. The more you have for the longer amount of time in your shot, the better your track will be, assuming that they're accurate. Now you can see here on this pencil, I thought maybe scaling up the track would work, but since the background is changing behind it, actually scaling it down to just be the size of the pencil head is beneficial. And it's generally not a good idea to track reflections because those can move all over the place and they're not actually a steady position, but I like to break rules, and these are tiny, so it won't be a big problem. Sometimes a tracking marker will get hopelessly snarled and messed up, and it won't be in the right area. And if that happens to me, I go to one side of the crazy mess on the timeline and just kind of clear all the information on the other side, which you can do by hitting this button here. And then I abandon that marker and find other productive things to do. Okay, I've added in a lot more trackers here, and now if you go up here, you can actually add in a tracker that tracks the location, rotation, and scale of a certain area in your footage, which partly is just cool, but also I think it helps to solve the track a little bit better. So if I scale this tracker up and track it forwards, you can see it bends and stuff. Right, now I've put in a decent amount of trackers, and I think they're pretty well tracked. If you go up to this menu here, you can hit the eye icon, and that will actually mute your footage, and you can see just sort of how the trackers look without any footage. And you can see that it's sort of 3D looking, which is exactly how Blender finds out what your camera is doing. Now if we go to the Solve tab on the left panel, you can set the A and B keyframes, which is pretty important. That's kind of how Blender figures out when there's some serious camera movement and parallax going on, when the trackers in the back are moving and the trackers in the front are moving. So basically what we're going to do is set a starting frame and an ending frame of when that kind of motion is happening in our clip. So I'm going to take a look here, and it looks like 40 and 68 are two different frames that sort of start and end this kind of motion. So once I set the A and B keyframes, I'm going to set this menu where it says refine, and I'm going to set that to focal length. And that way it will figure out the focal length for me, because I do not know that. There's also properties for finding out the distortion and everything of your lens. I'm not going to work on that for now. Just focal length will work. Oh, and another quick thing about the A and B keyframes, you have to have at least 8 common tracking markers on each of those keyframes for that to work out. And if that's all set up, you can hit Solve Camera Motion here, this big button, and the lower the number down here, the better. 1.7 isn't that bad. Once you get up into the 3 area, you might want to work on your track some more. So I just hit the plus icon and added in a new layout tab to work with the 3D space. From here, I'm going to select my camera, go into the Object Constraints tab, and add a camera solver constraint. Now if you go up here and hit Motion Tracking, you can actually see the individual tracking markers that we put down in 3D space, and that can be pretty helpful for reconstruction. If we play the animation, you can see the camera actually starts moving, which is also pretty cool. Now I'm going to hop back into the Motion Tracking tab, and I'm going to Shift and left-click select 3 of the markers that are on the flat surface of the table, so that will represent the ground. And over on the side panel, I'm going to click Floor, and those will actually line up nicely and reorient our camera in the 3D view. Now I'm just going to recenter the camera, and we'll be all set. If you want, you can go to the camera settings and add in your background footage just to see that it is indeed lining up and to get a better idea of what it's going to look like in the future. And now you can go crazy and add in all the CG stuff you like. So that's pretty much it. I hope you found this tutorial helpful, and I'll catch you next week in another video. Cheers!